We're going to call this meeting to order. I'm anticipating we're going to get some stragglers in as we go. We've had a couple people have notified us about their attendance, but I believe that we will, well, hopefully we will be able to have a meeting instead of an informational meeting, but that's what we're looking at this moment. I hereby call the Monday, July 24th, 2023 meeting of the Commission on Race and Access to Opportunity to order. Please, everyone, go ahead and turn off your cell phones. Nobody wants to be that person to disrupt this meeting because it's really quiet in here, so we won't be able to hide it. Lead staff is Brandon White, and the committee assistant is Brett Gillespie. Mr. Gillespie, please call the roll.
Senator Berg, Senator Neal, Senator Westerfield, Representative Brown, Representative Heverin, Representative Kulkarni,
Present.
Mr. Coleman, Mr. Davis, Ms. Drake, Dr. Jones, Mr. Roberts, Co-Chair Gibbons, Co-Chair Timoney.
Here. Okay. At this point, we're going to move ahead with an informational meeting only, and therefore we will not have to approve the minutes. Do we have any members that have any announcements or introductions? I would actually like to take this opportunity to address the passing of a pretty predominant member of the Central Kentucky community. Coach Alvis Johnson passed away on July 15th, 2023. Coach Johnson was a pivotal member of Central Kentucky in the Harrodsburg area. He was a Western Kentucky grad, history teacher, coach. He left behind his wife Rosetta, his son Derek Dennis. Derek and Dennis. Dennis Johnson, if you remember, was the National High School Player of the Year. Both Dennis and Derek played football at Kentucky, and they had a special son, Chad Vaughn. During his time in Harrodsburg, he had over 51 Division I athletes. And if you know anything about Harrodsburg Independent, it's a very, very small school. He was inducted into the Kentucky High School Athletic Association Hall of Fame, the Kentucky Track and Cross Country Coaches Association Hall of Fame, and the visitation for the celebration of his life is this Friday, July 21st. I know that there's probably only a handful of people who in Central Kentucky don't know who Alvis Johnson was. He was the National High School Athletic Director Association president for a number of years, and he was assistant athletic director at UK. He cared so much about people. The reason why I'm bringing this up is very early in my teaching and coaching career, he hosted the Heart of the Bluegrass track meet, and whoever won it received Coaches of the Year that year. And I was very fortunate to coach some very talented people, and I won it pretty early in my career. And he was always good with words and inspiration for people. And he believed I was going to be a great coach before I even knew what I was doing. So I'll never forget the impact he had briefly on my life and the many, many other people that he touched. So if you all wouldn't mind, if we could do a moment of silence. Thank you. All right. We had some... Okay. We're going to go ahead with an informational meeting. We are one shy of having a quorum. So we are actually going to skip approval of the meeting of the minutes from July 24th. All right. We're going to roll on to the first part of our meeting. We're going to go ahead and call the Kentucky Center for Statistics up to the table. Kentucky Stats was before the commission in November, but had to condense their presentation due to time constraints. We welcome them back. I know I personally had a lot of questions for you all, and was really looking forward to seeing you all on the agenda. To give a statistical and demographic overview of the Commonwealth. Speakers, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves for the record, make sure that the green light's on and you may begin.
I'm Jessica Fletcher. I'm the Marketing Analytics Director for KY Stats.
I'm Brian Mudrak. I'm a Senior Data Scientist at KY Stats.
Logan Rupert, Senior Research Analyst and Legislative Analyst.
Thank you. You may begin.
All right. Well, thank you for having us today. Like you said, we were here in November. We sort of breezed through that presentation fairly quickly. But we have since added several slides to this presentation, especially in the area of education. We did add some information about KEYS disbursements and the Work Ready Scholarship. So we'll be going over that in just a few minutes. But before we get started, I kind of wanted to start with a brief overview of our office. As many of you know, we were created by statute in 2013. We're administratively attached to the Education Labor Cabinet, and we are funded by state and federal grant money, and the federal money is from the U.S. Department of Education's State Longitudinal Data System grant. We have lots of data. We have about 6,000 data elements right now from over 45 data sources and 27 agencies across the state. And we use those to link together different pieces of data to form the Kentucky Longitudinal Data System, also known as the KLDS. We do have some very strict privacy and de-identification rules because we are dealing with Kentuckians' data. I won't get into that now, but you can find more information about our privacy rules at our website. We do redact some content, which you will see noted on a handful of these slides, and that simply means that the group that we were studying is fewer than 10 and could be potentially used to identify people, so we do redact that information. Just a reminder, we have a nonpartisan team, and we provide information based on the data, but we do not provide any causality of the data, or do we provide policy recommendations. Our research agenda was finalized in 2023 by our board of directors, and we have 4 core tenets of that research agenda. Those are to expand the access and usability of the data within the KLDS, to apply an equity lens to that data, to monitor data trends resulting from historic events in the Commonwealth, such as COVID or the natural disasters in 2021 and 2022. We are also working to expand the use of our modeling and predictive analytics to better understand our education and workforce systems. Just to provide a deeper dive onto what we mean when we say equity lens, that's not just looking simply at race or gender demographics. That's looking at things like people's backgrounds and experiences, their opportunities and their access, and even digging into things like how people are affected by certain items based on where they're from in Kentucky, whether that's Northern Kentucky, Southern Kentucky, or rural versus urban. We are getting ready to dig into these slides. One thing I did want to point out is that a lot of these, we try to paint a 10-year picture of the differences in how our population is changing. For some metrics, all of that information wasn't necessarily available, so we might have like a 2012 versus 2022, where on other slides you'll see 2010 versus 2020. Just wanted to point that out just because you will notice that. But with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Logan, who is going to start off with some census data from the American Community Survey.
Thank you. This brief section on population trends will be a very broad overview of how the population has changed in Kentucky over the previous 10 years. As we move forward, as Jessica mentioned, some of our years will change between slide to slide, but you can always see those at the top. In this example, we're looking at 2010 versus 2020. Additionally, all of the visualizations and graphics in this presentation are focusing on race. As we mentioned, we have a lot of different varieties, different demographics that we can use to break it down, but we just wanted to use this to kind of give a broad overview of one breakdown as an example. So we can see that the total population in Kentucky has increased from about 4.3 million in 2010 to slightly over 4.5 million in 2020. And I'll go into a bit of detail on this first slide to kind of give a brief overview of how the additional slides will follow. On the left side, you can see the population breakdown for each of these groups. For example, in 2010, the white population percentage was 86% of Kentuckians in 2010. This has shifted downward slightly to 81% of the population in 2020, while the Hispanic and Latino population, that bottom row, has increased from 3 to 5%. Those individuals of two or more races has increased from 1 to 4%. And you can see that the Asian individuals have gone from 1 to 2%. But for the most part, the other groups have remained fairly consistent over the last 10 years. While our total population has been increasing, our youth population has decreased slightly over the same time period. We're specifically looking at individuals aged 19 and under in this, but you can see that our population went from 1,146,000 in 2010 down slightly to 1,139,000. And similar to our total population, the individuals that are white decreased slightly across all age groups here, with the number of individuals being in another race that's not identified here slightly increasing. Additionally, looking at poverty, this time our time frame changes slightly, going from 2012 to 2021. For the state, our poverty rate was 19.4% in 2012, decreasing to 16.5% in 2021. All groups experienced some sort of drop during this time frame, with the largest decrease in poverty rate being those individuals that are Black or African American, as well as some other race, all who had been 36% in 2012, dropping to 24% in 2021. Next, looking at our inmate population in the state, we're looking again at 2012 to 2022 in this example. Our inmate population has decreased slightly, going from 21,857 individuals down to 19,712. The racial breakdown of this is white inmates slightly increasing from 74 to 76% of the inmate population, with Hispanic or Latino individuals increasing slightly as well from 1 to 2%, but then Black individuals decreasing from 24 to 21% over that time period. In summary, in general, our population is increasing and becoming more diverse. However, our youth population has decreased slightly over the last 10 years. Poverty rate has been decreasing for all of our racial groups in the state, and the inmate population decreased slightly between 2012 and 2022. And I'll turn it over to Brian Mudrack for the next section.
Thank you. So for the education trends, we'll shift from population over to our K-12 education, some scholarship and awards, as well as post-secondary enrollment and outcomes, as well as brief information about adult education. So starting with K-12 public school enrollment, at the top we can see that the total enrollment for K-12 education has slightly decreased between 2012 and 2021. And again, this kind of goes back similar to our population trends for the white students that has decreased between 2012 and 2021, whereas Hispanic and two or more races has increased in that time period. Next, we follow along with K-12. We're looking at discipline rates by race. So this is total discipline resolutions. So at the top, we can see all students. These are individual students involved in discipline resolutions. So you can see between 2013 and 2022, the total students involved in discipline resolutions has increased. And then at the bottom, those bar charts, that is a rate per 1,000. So this is total resolutions per 1,000 students. So note there that resolutions means that an individual student could be involved in multiple resolutions. So looking at those rates, you can see that regardless of race, total discipline resolutions has increased for each group, with Black students being involved in discipline resolutions at the highest rate. And then on the next slide, we look specifically at out-of-school suspensions. So out-of-school suspensions is a subsector of total discipline resolutions. We're again looking at 2013 versus 2022. We can see that all student number at the top. So like I said, out-of-school suspensions is a subsect of total resolutions. And if you were able to compare those numbers, you would see that out-of-school suspensions makes up a little under half of total discipline resolutions overall. And looking at the rates, we can see that, again, the rate of discipline resolutions has increased between these two time points, with black students increasing at a larger rate than all other race groups and being involved in out-of-school suspensions at a higher rate per 1,000. So moving from that, we're looking now at high school graduation rate. So at the top, you can see that the graduation rate in 2013 was 86.1%, and then in 2022, it was 89.9%. And then at the bottom, we just have just a bar chart represented by these people icons. And so you can see the graduation rates for each race group with white, Asian, and Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander having the highest graduation rates in 2022, whereas Hispanic and Black have the lower graduation rates. Two or more and Black students have increased graduation rates at a higher percent than some of the other groups between these two time points. Shifting from K-12 to scholarship awards, so this kind of is the transition between K-12 into post-secondary. Looking at this graph, the bars indicate the total number of students that were receiving disbursements, and then the bubbles are the dollar amounts received, and that's a median for KEYS disbursements. And so between these two time points, all race groups except white increased in terms of number of disbursements, with white students decreasing slightly. But overall, between 2012 and 2021, the total number of disbursements increased, as well as the dollar amount has increased between these two time points. Moving on, we have dual credit scholarship awards. So one caveat here to notice is that we have 2019 versus 2021. The reason we're only looking back to 2019 is this is a relatively new award. So this is as far back as we're able to look. Similar to the KEYS disbursements, we can see that overall the number of disbursements has increased for each group, and the dollar amount has increased. The overall number has about doubled between 2019 and 2021 in terms of disbursements. And then the final scholarship and award is the Work Ready Scholarship. Similar to dual credit, this is a relatively newer award, so we're looking at 2018 versus 2021. Again, a very similar story in terms of the number of disbursements. So this the total number of disbursements has just under tripled, and then the overall dollar amount of median dollar amount has increased for each racial group. Transitioning now to post-secondary enrollment. At the top, we can see total post-secondary students enrolled. So between 2013 and 2023, total post-secondary enrollment has decreased by about 11,000. And then, again, similar to before, Kentucky is more diverse, so the percentage of white students has decreased, whereas for Hispanic and two or more races, those groups of students have increased in percentage. Then the next slide should have completers. So again, this is a percentage of the whole. So this is just out of 100%, what does each group make up of that 100%? So you can see in 2012 versus 2022, the total post-secondary completers. So over that time period, there are now more post-secondary completers, and then we can see the racial breakdown of those completers. So very similar in the fact that white students have decreased in terms of proportion, whereas all other races have either increased or stayed the same. And then finally, we have adult education participation rate. So this is just a percentage of the whole. So what portion does each grouping make up of total adult education? And we can see that for Black students, they are participating in adult education at a lower proportion of the whole, whereas all other groups are either the same or slightly more. And that wraps up education trends. So overall, some of the takeaways is, diversity in Kentucky has increased for K-12 and post-secondary education, so a more diverse student body. We can see that just for discipline resolutions, overall, there's more discipline resolutions in K-12 education. Graduation rates have increased for each racial group in Kentucky, And then as for award amounts, award dollar amounts have increased, as well as the count of students has increased in disbursements. And then I believe I will be handing back over to Logan.
K-12, discipline, African American.
Do we want to pause for a moment and ask a couple questions pertinent to the data? I know Senator Westerfield has a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you define a completer? Is that a degree recipient?
Yes, that's a degree recipient, regardless, or that's at any degree level.
Okay. And then I can't see the years that we're talking about. We're comparing this in the slide right before this, or maybe that one. I don't see what years we're talking about. Am I missing it?
So it just right above the people icon. Relatively small.
Okay,
2013 and 2023.
2023.
And then the next slide is 2012
Okay.
and 2022.
I could not see that year to save my life. Thank you.
And Representative Kulkarni.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for presenting. It's a whole lot of data, and I know that you're not going to be able to give a lot of analysis. I had a question. I mean, you're going to give analysis, don't get me wrong, but there's just a whole lot of threads to tie together. And so one quick question I had was in your post-secondary completer slide. You have a section for non-resident aliens that went from 2% in 2012 to 8% in 2022. Are those foreign students? Are those undocumented students? All of the above?
I would have to double check on that. That comes from our partners at CPE, so we can check on their terminology for that section.
Okay. Because, I mean, yeah, the way it's framed, it could be all of them, just anybody that's not a citizen, essentially, or a permanent resident. So I would be curious to see the disaggregation of that particular segment. And then in some of your earlier slides where you were talking about, I guess, population trends, I was curious if you were able to speak to some of the decreases, which were mainly due to, I guess, less participation in the white population, but increased participation in, Asian, Black, Hispanic. Is that trend expected to continue? And I guess what would be, not a prediction, but where do you think in 50 years that kind of trend is going to lead us?
So our total population is going up, and it's not necessarily to say that there are more or less of a specific race, but just that the composition of the total population is changing, and so it has obviously increased over diversity has increased over the last 10 years. It's nearly impossible to make exact future predictions, but this is just has what happened up until this point.
So this is, again, just the past, 10 years?
2010 to 2020 in
2010
this
to
example,
2020.
yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your information. It's a lot to discern here. But as I look at your slide on K through 12, disciplinary rates by race, it looks like the African American race is staying high, and also the suspensions of being out of school. And is there a correlation between disciplinary rates being having discipline out of the school or out of school versus employment on the backside?
That's definitely something we could look at. Not sure if we'd be able to draw that conclusion, but something we can explore. We don't have that prepared today.
Okay. I just think that based on the information and get a quick look at this, that African American students are being disciplined out of school, and how does that correlate to what's happening in our economy is I think of concern.
So perhaps try to dig a little bit into workforce outcomes for students.
Probably a deeper dive. That
Yeah.
A lot of what's happening, I think, in my community
Yes.
and in the urban areas across our state, is that whether it's intended or it's accidentally happening, is that there are consequences for discipline in the school system and in society and what's happening with young people.
Sure. Yes, we will definitely work on that, and then we'll get in touch with Mr. White to follow up on that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. There's a lot of information here, and I know you all are in the business of not giving opinions, and I know that a couple of questions have been posed about that, and you guys did a really good job of remaining Switzerland, and that's good. That's what you're supposed to be. But I do think one of the points that's worth mentioning also is, Kentucky's population has gone up, but they're not kids being born. They're people moving here. So they're, as a geography teacher, I used to talk about push factors and pull factors. So obviously, economically, you could derive from your data that if they're not kids being born, but our population is increasing, it's for economic reasons. So
one thing that actually didn't make the final cut of our slides was we did want to include some birth rates. The data on that is pretty limited right now, though. So we need to work more closely with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services on getting better racial breakdowns for people being born within the state, because we do want to study that, but unfortunately there's not great data right now to help us dig into that a little bit more.
Sure. And one other data point that I think is important, as we were going through the presentation, you had the overall numbers at the top, and then you had the percentages per thousand for a lot of your categories pertaining to education. The one that stuck out to me was the behavior referrals, because there's fewer kids that are K through 12. So that number should be theoretically smaller if there's fewer K through 12 students. And it's not. It's actually the incidents are more.
That is a reason we did the rate per 1,000, so that it would be a fair comparison in that sense, because it's just a rate per 1,000 students. So even though the total number of students in K-12 has changed, the rates are still comparable in that sense.
Sure.
And those discipline resolutions are also, that could be one student counted several times, a student with multiple disciplinary problems. So that's another caveat to that slide specifically, is that there could be a student that's counted, more than once, but not in all cases.
Sure. And Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just curious, and maybe I read this wrong, but you have the overall number, then you go into percentages. Do you also have the raw numbers that are related to those percentages? Are they in this as well? Did I miss it?
It's not on the slide. Sorry. It's not on the slide, but we could definitely get that to you.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
And what do you see the value in percentages versus raw numbers in terms of getting a real understanding of what's going on here? Is there value in that from your perspective?
I think trying to do a like-to-like comparison. If all of our presentations were presented on just a number, you wouldn't be able to see a fluctuation in population or a comparison between the different groups. But trying to put everything in a percentage or a per 1,000 basis is trying to make it more apples to apples, that you can compare the actual implications between the groups, controlling for the varying population sizes and demographic changes throughout the time.
And I get that entirely. I'm just wondering, is there value in reflecting the raw numbers as well in the same presentation? Do you see any value?
There is some value, and we try to represent that by, including those numbers at the top often. And I believe later in the presentation, we'll link you to some of our reports, and often a lot of our interactive reports, we do include both percentages and raw numbers so that users can, explore the data and get a better understanding of the populations that they're looking at.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Would it be burdensome if, with this report here, that raw numbers could be presented as well at a later date?
We can do that. And I will say, too, that we at KY Stats have recently launched a blog to, you're very familiar, I'm sure, with our interactive reports, but we've recently launched a blog that helps to provide more of a narrative of that. Once we are planning to post about this presentation, and we will definitely include those numbers disaggregated for you in that.
Thank you.
But we can also email those to you separately.
Thank you very much.
All right, proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Here we are.
So briefly closing this up with some workforce trends in Kentucky. First, looking at the household median income in the state, we can see that this has increased in 2012 from 41,724 up to over 55,573. This has increased for most of our racial groups in Kentucky, with Asian individuals having the largest increase, going from $52,261 to slightly over $71,000 in 2021.
If I may interrupt briefly, I think would be really a good reference point here if you could determine in comparison with poverty line. So by saying the number went up from 41,000 to 55,000, obviously that's an increase. But relative to the poverty line, I think would also show, factors due to inflation and buying power and all those types of things.
We'll absolutely provide that later.
Thank you.
Looking at our labor force participation rate in the state, just the percentage of these racial groups that are participating in the labor force as either employed or unemployed, we can see that in 2012, the labor force participation rate was 59.8%, which dropped a percentage point to 58.8% in 2021. During this time period, the labor force participation rate for white and Hispanic individuals dropped, but every other racial group during this time frame remained consistent or increased in those 10 years. And then our unemployment rate for that time period, we can see that in 2012, our overall unemployment rate was 9.3%, which dropped down to 5.4% in 2021, with every group either decreasing or remaining the same during that time period. And then again, our median income is up over the observable time frame. The labor force participation rate decreased slightly, and depending on which racial group you're in, it may have gone up or down just a little bit. And then between 2012 and 2021, the unemployment rate decreased or remained the same for all of our groups. We'll pause here for some additional questions. I know we covered some, and I know that was a lot of data very quickly, but as we mentioned, we are able to do this, socioeconomic, gender, additional analysis, but we just wanted to give you guys a broad overview of the data we have available.
Senator Westerfield.
Thank you, Chairman. What does non-institutional mean?
It's individuals in the state who are not either in a K-12 compulsory education or potentially jailed individuals that may be able to look for work or are currently looking for work.
And then, if I can, it would be helpful. I'm going back, and I apologize, Chairman. I was late finishing one meeting, so I missed this. Did you already talk about the inmate population slide? You already went through that?
Yes, briefly.
Could you all, on each of these where you're talking about populations, it'd be helpful to have a frame of reference for what the actual population is, just amongst the general population of Kentucky for each one of these groups, compared to our inmate population, compared to show what disparities exist, if there are, and I believe that there are disparities between the number of black Kentuckians in the general population versus the number of black Kentuckians in prison.
So that's, again, we can absolutely provide raw numbers to get that analysis. But we had hoped to do these on a rate, being able to compare this, Kentucky population slide here. We can see that in 2020, which was the most recent year available for this data, we have 8% of our total population is black or African American, compared to 81% of our population being white. And then when we get to the inmate population here, we can see that the black breakdown of those inmates is 21% compared to 76% of inmates being white.
I didn't catch that it was there on that slide a few slides back. Okay. That's just a style thing, not a substance thing. Be easier for my pea brain to see that at one place. Thank you for pointing that out.
Representative Kulkarni?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you could go back to your unemployment rate slide, I just had a question about the description of what we're looking at. So this includes people who had no employment during the reference week, were available for work except for illness, and had made specific efforts to find employment. So this does not necessarily include those folks who had no employment and were available but had not made specific efforts.
So yes, to be in the labor force, you either have to be looking or looking for work, pretty much. So if you were not participating in the workforce, which is kind of shown during the labor force participation slide just right before, you would not be counted in the unemployment rate because you are not participating and not trying to participate in the workforce.
Okay, and is that, my next question was going to be, is there data on what's dropped down? But I guess that would be that prior slide, Kentucky's labor force, like where the decreases, or maybe where that attrition is, like the folks that aren't looking anymore.
So we could potentially do by geography or socioeconomic status, anything like that.
Yeah.
That's
not on here.
It's
though,
not,
so
no.
Okay, I would like to see some of that data if at all possible. Thank you.
I will also point you to, we also have labor market information under our purview. So these 3 reports here are where you can go to find recently updated data on things like labor force participation rate and lots of information about occupations that are growing and expanding in the state.
Ma'am, how current is your data?
The worker report is updated quarterly in Kentucky. The future skills report is updated on an annual basis, I believe. And the workforce dashboard, Brian, do you know how often that one is?
Yearly, I believe. Yeah, I believe.
Worker is where you'll find the most up-to-date information.
How granular? How county?
Yes.
By county data?
Worker goes from, you can look at state level, you can look at workforce planning regions, which is 4, you can look at LWA, which is 10 regions, and then all the way down to county. So you can, look in terms of groupings very easily for that report.
And when will you, is that a January report or is that a July report? You said yearly.
So worker is quarterly. So,
okay.
Every 4 months, I believe, starting in January.
Thank you.
Or 3.
Do we have any other questions? You all did really well. This is, whenever you all come, I mean, we ran out of time the last time because there's so many questions. There's so many things that we can dive into and ask to gather more data. Do you all have a Twitter page? I feel like that you should all be posting these different things so that we can follow along because, I mean, this packet that you all gave us is going to be entertaining my family's dinner times for the next at least year.
Well,
so
glad to hear it. And we, we're always available to do presentations like this. It does take a significant amount of time for us to pull this kind of thing together. But any legislative needs you all have, we're happy to help out.
Well, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everyone. We're going to go out of order a little bit here. We do have a quorum now, so I need to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the June 24th. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Westerfield. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you. All right, our next group. Advanced Kentucky Computer Coding Initiative, Increasing Minority Participation. If you all wouldn't mind coming up, sitting at the table, and introducing yourselves for the record, and begin. Just a warning, it's a tough act to follow. I mean, I'm pretty excited about the previous group, so the bar's high.
We'll do our best. I'm Monique Rice. I am the program director for Advanced Kentucky Science Initiative.
I
am Sherry McGuffin. I'm STEM coordinator for Advanced Kentucky.
And I'm Terry Samuel. I'm the president of KSTC. We're the parent organization over the Advanced Kentucky program.
It's good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you.
So talking a little bit about the importance of computer science. Computer science is an innovation that undergirds pretty much all of the innovations that are going on in the United States and globally.
Ma'am, is your microphone on? Do you have a green light on?
I have a green light on.
There we go.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Currently, not currently, in 2022, there were about 5,088 computing jobs going unfilled, available in the state of Kentucky, and they have an average salary of approximately $75,000 a year. Yet we only graduated 706 university and college graduates in computer science in 2020. And in 2022, there were 2,280 students taking advantage of AP Computer Science. Those are students taking the class. About 1,400 of those students went on to take the AP Computer Science A and AP Computer Science Principles exams. When we compare those numbers to what's going on with computing jobs and the wide variety of what's available in the workforce today, we are not producing enough students to fill the jobs that are currently exist, much less anything that's going to exist in the future. So when we look at the demographics of students that are currently taking a computer science course versus the demographics of the state, and this is comparing K-12 students, you'll see that in every racial category, white, African American, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, and not listed as the rest, the two rates demographically are comparable. For example, for African American students, there are 10.6% of all students taking a computer science course, and that's as defined by the Computer Science IT Academy as part of KDE. 10.6% of the students taking the computer science course are African American, where 10.8% of the student population is African American. So the demographics are comparable, relatively speaking. Where we are not comparable is in gender parity. There's only 34% of students who are female taking a computer science class, as opposed to 48% of the general population of students in K-12 in Kentucky. When we look at students of the schools where the teachers are participating in our program, we primarily do professional development in computer science. So what we're noticing is that in the 55 regular comprehensive high schools, well, not just comprehensive, this is 612, 70% of the students at those schools on average is white, where 28% are from categories that are not white. When we compare that to the schools that are area technology centers, and then those are schools that are primarily serving career and technology education, 85% of the student population of those who have participated in our programs are white, whereas 14% of those students are non-white. So Advanced Kentucky's Computer Science Initiative does the following. We provide pathways for teachers to receive the approval for computer science. So what happens is we don't have enough computer science teachers. As you imagine, there's not a lot of folks with computer science majors going into teaching. So in order to meet the increasing demand, we have created, along with partnering with the Kentucky Department of Education, CSIT Academy, approval for any certified teacher to teach any computer science or IT course by completing one of our programs. The programs in particular are the training for computer science principles and the training for AP Computer Science A. And those are year-long trainings. They have a 5-day summer workshop, and then they go on to continue throughout the school year to support the teacher in their first year of teaching computer science. We provide professional learning in a lot of other areas as well, through our partnerships, which include primarily our major partners are the Kentucky Department of Education's Computer Science IT Academy and Code.org. Code.org is a global 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is increasing the number of students taking computer science and making computer science foundational. So we are also part of Code.org's advocacy group, and we seek to make sure that every student, regardless of whether they intend to go into a computer science career or not, has the opportunity to learn the foundational computer science, similar to how you learn about photosynthesis and about British literature when you're in school. Our remaining partners include several organizations. I'm going to let my colleague Sherry McGuffin talk about our other partners and the programs that we work with them with.
So some of our other partners, we have a national organization called CS4All, which is also a nonprofit. It evolved from an original organization, CS for NYC in New York City. So CS4All is a national advocacy group in which the belief system is that computer science education is for every student. And our second partner is iCode KY, in which we partner with Apple. And with Apple, we provide professional learning services and professional learning opportunities to teachers to learn Swift coding. And that is a kindergarten K through 12 type of professional learning opportunity. Somerset Community College, we partnered with them and to produce a professional learning opportunity in which teachers, K through 12 teachers, are able to take 3D printing classes through Somerset Community College, and then in turn, after those teachers take those classes, they can either use the material in the classrooms, they can become facilitators for dual credit classes that are focused upon 3D printing and additive manufacturing, and they can earn an industry certificate if they choose to do so, in which that industry certificate provides or is a 3D printing technician level 1 certificate, and then those instructors are able to not only facilitate the courses but actually teach them at a partner and community college for dual credit to students if they choose to do so. We have ESEP, which we've just been invited to join, and that is expanding computer education program and partnership, and that is with multiple states across the U.S. And then CSTA Kentucky, which is an organization, a national organization of CSTA, Computer Science Teachers Association. Kentucky is the affiliate, and often computer science teachers are in schools and in districts by themselves, and so they feel like lone rangers, and CSTA Kentucky provides an opportunity for teachers to network so that they're not lone rangers any longer, and they have that that network throughout the state of Kentucky, as well as national opportunities for that. We provide, as Advanced Kentucky, virtual options quarterly for teachers to meet, and then we try to provide at least one in-person opportunity per year.
So a part of our partnership with CS4All is their SCRIPT workshops, and SCRIPT is an acronym, and please don't make me try to remember what the letters mean in that acronym because I won't get it right. But basically what happens in the SCRIPT workshop, myself and Dr. McGuffin are trained as facilitators for SCRIPT workshops, and we work with school districts to develop their own computer science plan. What happens a lot is that there are individual teachers or individual schools within a district that might be doing 1,000,001 things in computer science, but the other schools in that district are not necessarily feeding into that program or being a part of it. So a middle school might be running a Girls Who Code club and teaching computer science discoveries, and then but the elementary schools are not feeding students into it because there's no computer science going on in that elementary school. So through the CS4All SCRIPT workshops, we're able to help school districts look at their landscape of programs, including computer science, but other things as well, to develop a computer science plan that will better address making sure that all of the students in their school district have an opportunity to take computer science. So I mentioned Code.org earlier, and Code.org, as a national organization, has made representation recommendations to states in 9 policies to make computer science fundamental. Of those 9 policies, Kentucky has met 7 of them. The 2 we have not met, creating programs at institutions of higher education to offer computer science to pre-service teachers, and requiring that all secondary schools offer computer science. Those are the 2 that we have not done. We do have, however, rigorous K-12 computer science standards. We have a state plan that was approved in 2021. We have allocated funding through teacher professional learning and support through the CSIT Academy. We have implemented clear certification pathways for computer science teachers. There is an official certification and endorsement in addition to the approval for computer science. Establishing dedicated computer science positions in state and local education areas. Dr. Sean Jackson, who is the CS lead for the state, is the person, well, I just said what he does. He also is in charge of the Computer Science IT Academy. Districts can choose to allow computer science to satisfy a core graduation requirement by opting into students being able to get math or science credit for computer science. So the ruling basically is that teachers certified in mathematics or certified in science teaching a computer science class means that that district can decide to let the computer science class count as a core graduation requirement for math or computer science. And finally, allowing computer science to satisfy an admission requirement through institutions of higher education is the 7th of the policies that Kentucky currently meets. Code.org has recently updated their 9 policies. And when I say recently, I mean last week, to add a 10th policy. And that policy is a requirement for every student to take computer science to receive a high school diploma. Key takeaways about what we've presented is that demographics of students taking computer science courses is comparable to all state students. There is still work to be done with gender equity. We are woefully underrepresented as females in the computer science area. Area technology centers where most CTE pathways, including CS, are taught are not comparable to the state students in terms of demographics. When we look at the ATCs and we look at the number of students who are in CTE pathway completers, we'll notice that we have over 2,000 students, for example, enrolled in AP Computer Science. We have about 1,500 of those students taking AP Computer Science exams, but we only have 888 students completing computer science pathways. Since the computer science pathways are housed primarily at ATCs, area technology centers, the question is, what is the disconnect and how can we connect more students with the idea that computer science can be a career pathway for them? And finally, the last key takeaway is that Kentucky has achieved 7 of the 9 policies to make computer science fundamental. Our recommendations are that Kentucky should work to continue to make computer science fundamental. I alluded to it before, but computer science is no longer just for students who are going to be a programmer. Computer science teaches students algorithms, abstraction. Every student should have a basic knowledge of how the internet works, of how AI works, of how these things are, whether they're going into that particular career field or not. And let's face it, there are very few career fields now that don't involve some amount of computers in working in those jobs. We should also offer computer science education to pre-service teachers. As we get more teachers going into, especially in elementary level grades, them having a working knowledge of computer science that they can share with their students is becoming more and more important. Students that are currently in K-12 have never lived a life without screens, computers, or phones. I mean, this is more powerful than the computer that I learned to program on. I won't say how long ago when I was an undergraduate. But this has understanding how this works, how to make an app, where apps come from, needs to become more familiar knowledge for students instead of less. And we should encourage more underrepresented groups to participate in the CTE-CS pathways. Right now, the CTE-CS pathways are not at every area technology center. Every student doesn't have an opportunity to participate in it. And of the students that are participating in it, most of them are not minority students. So we need to look at what's happening there, be able to dive a little deeper into why, if an area technology center isn't offering a computer science pathway, why aren't they? And why are some of the ATCs or some schools that are offering CTE pathways opting out of offering computer science? The last thing I want to mention is that we're having an advocacy event on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. Details to follow. We just got the date approved and everything. I'm hoping to get a bigwig plenary speaker, but they haven't agreed yet, so I can't tell you who it is. But that Coding at the Capitol event will run from 9 a.m. until about 3 p.m. and we will have students showcasing their work as teachers who've not only participated in our particular programs, but in other computer science programs, because we're not the only show in town, and we encourage students to be able to learn more about computer science. The students want to learn it, the businesses need it, we need to teach it, and we need to get more students involved. So I don't know if I was better than KY Stats, but
Equally as good.
I will take that.
But a different style, a different context. So,
absolutely.
And you all don't have to be Switzerland. You all can wait. You can throw your opinions out there wherever you'd like. And that was an excellent presentation. A lot of information there. Do we have any questions from everyone? Representative Kulkarni.
Thank you, Chairman. I have several. I'll narrow them down to 3.
Okay, start with the third one.
Oh, okay. Well, now you've thrown me off. I'll start with one. So thank you very much for your presentation. I had, and thank you also, I think you answered maybe my last question with your last comment about computer science not being just programming.
Absolutely.
I think you had mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
Because my primary concern as you were going through your presentation was coding is used, right? The word coding is used a lot. You've got Code Kentucky, you've got code.org. Low-level coding and low-level computer programming is not going to be something that humans are going to be doing for much longer. Low-level coding, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Low-level coding and low-level computer programming is not something that human beings are going to be doing for much longer, even now. That's
right.
Being phased out. And that kind of leads me into my second question. I am moving backwards, which is what are the specific computer science programs? Because computer science is a huge, broad term, right?
Absolutely.
So what specifically are you talking about when you say computer science? And I'm assuming this is all just K through 12, right? You're not even going into post-secondary options. In the K through 12 plans that you're working on and have worked on, is there anything that is specific to these sort of higher level software positions that will still need humans? And how are we getting there? How are we moving away from this low level coding and programming to get to those positions?
Well, one of the things that I can talk to what we're offering to teachers in terms of professional learning and what some other people are doing. We are working with teachers to teach the CS Principles class, which is a broad-based computer science class that was developed by College Board. It's an advanced placement class. Programming is about 40% of that class. Most of that class deals with how the internet works, what is a network, what is AI. So getting students a more basic foundational knowledge of computer science in broad terms, and frankly, having them learn that computer science isn't just low-level programming. The other courses that we're doing with Code.org, Computer Science Discoveries, also takes an approach where it's coming at it from different areas. There's a physical computing unit where they are actually programming a microbit, thank you, which they can make light up and do things like that, which is very apropos to programming things like PLCs in factories. It has a web design unit, so teaching students how to create a website. It has a gaming unit that teaching students how to learn about gaming. And the entire purpose is the problem-solving aspect, and not necessarily knowing how to code. So I totally agree with you in that the idea of being a low-level programmer, although it's not gone yet, and banking industry isn't getting rid of Fortran and COBOL anytime soon, but being able to apply it more broadly. Media arts is computer science. Additive manufacturing is computer science. Those little computers in the factory that tell the arms what to do, that's computer science. And being able to give students that broad information about what computer science really is and what they can do with it is our primary mission.
Final question, real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
To piggyback on top of that, I think that one thing that we hope to do as well is that Advanced Kentucky has partnerships with those that are not just specifically computer science related as well. With the CSIT Academy, with Kentucky Department of Education, and those pathways cross-reference with a lot of other pathways, whether we've introduced our first additive manufacturing hybrid pathway, which cross-references with manufacturing, with engineering, as well as computer science. So I think in strengthening our partnerships so that, we're not doing this by ourselves, we have partners in this.
I'm mainly here for my looks, but to support Monique and Sherry. As somebody who graduated with a degree in electrical engineering 38 years ago, at the time, that basic programming that you're talking about, not the capital B basic language, but the fundamental stuff, that was reserved for computer science majors. And as an electrical engineer, I learned the very basics. But that, obviously in 38 years, a lot has changed in that world. You still got to get through the very early steps, and that's a lot of, kids learn it now in middle school, what I learned in college, but the point is, if you're going to be the person that's going to program artificial intelligence and try to control artificial intelligence, you better have those basic early steps, and so that's a lot of what they're learning.
Absolutely, and I agree. And the reason I was asking kind of what are the specific programs, and thank you for answering that, is that it's inverted in terms of the population of people that are in STEM and in computer science, computer-related occupations generally, because the whole immigration wave, especially from India in the 90s and throughout now, is software-related, right? People taking like banks and digitizing data, large corporations, like all of that is still ongoing. So the competition is fierce when these kids graduate and go into the post-secondary world or beyond. So they're now competing with foreign students, the majority of the ones in STEM, of which are Asian, Chinese, and Indian specifically. And they are, they have come here with a purpose that, you've got a bunch more of them so that you may not see them in your K through 12, but all of a sudden you're dealing with individuals that have whatever training they've gotten from their home, K through 12 kind of programming. So my concern, and I guess I can follow up, but my concern is that we need to adequately prepare our kids to be in that workforce and that environment. And so if it is something that is more broad-based, or if it is something that we teach them with more specificity, I would be curious to follow up with you, and I will, in terms of what we can do on that level as well, because that's not going away.
And that's part of our advocacy work in making sure that I once read a stat that most of the computer science majors that are produced in the United States are not from United States citizens, that they are actually international students who come to the United States, get a computer science degree, and a lot of them return to their home country, a lot of them stay here. Making sure that students in our cities, counties, our hills and hollers are all have that same opportunity. I like to use an example of myself. I'm not a native Kentuckian, so forgive me, y'all. But when I was a child, there was a lot of things where I had an interest in, but there was simply nowhere for me to find out about it. I might have been a computer programmer if I had found out about it earlier. And I went to a science and tech magnet, so I actually learned to program in 12th grade. But it wasn't like the school down the street around the corner where they had those people coming out here. I mean, one of the things I wanted to do was completely unrelated to computer sciences. I wanted to become an architect. I still don't know any architects. I have no idea how you become an architect. And so I never pursued it, not because I couldn't, but because I was unaware of how the first steps to be able to do those things. Making sure that students are aware of the opportunities and where they can go with it is a huge deal. There's so much that can be done with a basic foundational knowledge of computer science.
Thank you. Thank you for your indulgence, Chairman.
You're welcome.
Can I actually add one more thing right onto that? Is Sherry and I are deeply involved in another project around additive manufacturing. So I'll geek out a little on numbers, but in the new high thrust GE aircraft engine, the GE 9XX aircraft engine, there are 304 additive manufacturing parts. The manufacturing of those parts is not something that you do by pushing buttons, right? The people that run the machines that build those parts have to be highly technical. They have to understand computer science. So it may be who's getting a PhD or a master's, but it may be who's running that 3D machine that needs, the equivalent of an associate's degree in computer science. Right? So it spans the full workforce across the total workforce, but we're obviously very focused on bringing those to Kentucky.
Thank you. Senator Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this exchange probably covered what I was interested in. I will make an observation. I think this is a fantastic presentation. First of all, I think it rivals the one we had before, quite frankly, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to make the observation. I have a niece goes to school in Virginia, and when she was in the 10th grade, she knew that she wanted to go into cybersecurity. And now she's in the 12th grade, and she's, boom, making that step.
Right.
So she got it really early. She got that in middle school. That's because of the familiarity and becoming early. So I love the recommendations that you're making with respect to that. And last observation, Mr. Chairman, is you got the y'all down.
Thank you. Thank you. My family's from Virginia, so I do got the y'all. So.
Thank you, Senator Neal. Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for the presentation. Very, very insightful. And I have to admit, 5,000 jobs above the median income in Kentucky, that's a tremendous opportunity for a lot of people in Kentucky. So what I wanted to ask you is you mentioned awareness and increasing awareness. Are there other barriers that have been identified or perceived for if you're a young person in middle school or high school and you want to do? Are there things in the process that would maybe keep you from being able to do that? Testing or other things? I don't know that you could identify.
To a degree, I can think of one thing specifically. There's known in the STEM education world as kind of the STEM cliff. It's right around that middle school age, and it's particularly for females, in which you have an equal representation of students that say that they enjoy STEM up until probably about 6th grade, and then that decreases significantly for females. And so research has indicated that there's that STEM cliff that we have to fight probably as barriers for females to take computer science courses. I think I'm a lifelong Kentuckian, grew up in Wayne County, live in Bardstown and Nelson County now. And I can think specifically when I was about 7th grade and my dad sat me down and said, Sherry, you're pretty good at this computer science thing. Maybe you should think about going into it. And that was significant to me But then, as an educator, everyone in Advanced Kentucky is a previous educator, prior educator. We still are educators. And that statement that my dad gave me carried on into the work I know that we all do. And that I had that opportunity, my dad giving me that encouragement. We as educators, we have to give every student that opportunity and that encouragement. And so sometimes it's just that efficacy barrier that we have to break through by just offering the class and encouraging kids to take it.
If I could just so access to technology, all those things are pretty available for most.
Not always. I think specifically, we did a workshop in Hazard, Kentucky back in June. And one of the teachers there was telling me about, she's an engineering teacher and physics teacher. She said, she has access for her students at schools, but she lives in the holler. So she doesn't have that broadband access that sometimes that she even needs as an educator. And you can just imagine, the kids that live in the hollers as well may not have that too.
To kind of piggyback on what Sherry is saying, one of the things that became evident in the pandemic is just how many people don't have access to the internet and how many people don't have devices. You can use your phone to do a lot. You can't use your phone to program. It's just not powerful enough for that. So if a student wanted to do more than that, they would have to have access. The best place that they have access is the schools, because the schools basically do have, every school in the state has broadband, every school has devices, but what happens when they leave the school grounds? When are they going to be able to practice on their own, develop things on their own outside of the school day? Another thing that came up as part of what happened during the height of 2020 and 2021 is that a lot of these programs, especially computer science, since they were thought of as electives, technically there are electives, but I don't believe they're electives anymore. That's just a belief, that's not official. But a lot of those courses got dropped because they were making decisions at the time about who to keep, how to keep them. Frankly, I think that was backwards. I think that in an era where you had to use computers more, teaching students computer science was more important as opposed to us having to rebuild. But we're not the only folks in those areas to have to rebuild because of what happened during 2020 and 2021. But understanding that to stop thinking of computer science, I think computer science, frankly, has a marketing problem. That people think of computer science and they think of somebody that looks like Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory. There are a lot of Sheldon Coopers out there, but there are a lot of people who aren't Sheldon, who are doing great things that folks need to be exposed to and aware of.
Thank you. And Representative Neal. Brown, sorry.
Thank you, Mr.
To wrap us up, our last question.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
You said something about 1 through 9 components or something that you said, and you didn't finish that. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
The 9 policies?
Yes.
Yeah, so Code.org, the advocacy group, created the 9 policies about 6 years ago. Code.org's been around for 10 years. And currently there are, Kentucky has met 7 of those 9 policies. So the standards, the CS plan, the CS lead in the state, certification pathways, satisfying a core graduation requirement, and satisfying an admission requirement at higher education. Those are all things that Kentucky does do, and all states don't do that. Kentucky is, there are more states that are adopting these 9 policies and using those 9 policies to determine where their state should go. These 9 policies are referred in our Kentucky CS state plan. And currently 2 of them, the one where we're creating programs where pre-service teachers take computer science and requiring that all secondary schools offer computer science, are the 2 that we don't meet. Most of our schools in Kentucky offer computer science. Most of the secondary schools offer it. What's happening is that they may offer a course in, I'm going to say media arts because it's the first thing that came into, which is a very small course with very few students. And that's the only CS/IT course that they offer, as opposed to everyone offering a foundational course. Every school doesn't offer introduction to computer science. Right? So having a core knowledge that it offered to all students doesn't currently exist.
Also mention that there's a big difference between the digital literacy definition and computer science definition. Most of our schools offer those digital literacy courses, but that definition was created years ago in which digital literacy meant something very different. Whereas computer science now is more encompassing of what we are training students to do 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So that's just a differentiation that I wanted to make specifically. And also, I think on the last slide, on the very last one where Monique has the references, this is what Kentucky's snapshot looks like. But there is a snapshot for every state in the U.S. So you can look at how we compare against other states and where their non-policies are in terms of reference.
Mr. Chair, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was going to make one last comment because I know we've gone over time. I'd be remiss, given they're in the room, and even though Monique and Sherry's presentation was much better than the previous one, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you for KY Stats. They are a great partner.
Absolutely.
They provide a lot of data to us, and which helps us make better informed decisions.
I'd just like to emphasize,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the statement at the end of your 9 policies, or the 9 policies here, to Code.org has recently updated its policy recommendations to include a requirement for every student to take computer science to receive a high school diploma.
Yes.
I think if there's something that we can get out of this presentation that we can potentially put into the Department of Education is to make that happen, because we could take a giant step in making sure that our students are ready for the rest of the 21st century and the 22nd century and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And point I'd like to make before we transition on, the two things I'm seeing in the news a lot. Cybersecurity, obviously, it's all over the
Absolutely.
place.
Everywhere.
School districts and hospitals and all kinds of stuff. AI is all over the place. I mean, that's something that is really, really important. We talk about how in your K through 6 or 7 coursework, there's no computer science, yet they're using computer science.
Yes.
So I think it's about it's about recognizing how it's incorporated even earlier.
Absolutely. What's happening in elementary schools is that we have no way to keep track. So there's lots of programs out there for elementary school students. Code.org has one. But because of how we keep records of what's being taught in elementary school, we don't have a way right now to determine what and how much computer science is being taught in elementary schools.
And Senator Neal, you mentioned your niece a few minutes ago, and just to tag on to that, my son is a non-commissioned officer in the Army, and he went in as an intelligence officer. And now, 5 years into his training, they have decided to train him in cybersecurity because they need that addition into to his job. So that's a perfect point as you're making right here. He took computer science 10 years ago in high school, and now it's becoming useful to him.
And I think for me in particular, the most real manifestation of this topic is, the Blue Oval SK battery plant that's coming in.
Absolutely.
We're talking about 21st century jobs. Well, we have a massive manufacturing center that's about to open here in 3 or 4 years. So they're going to need people, and I would love them to be homegrown, even though, I'm also not from Kentucky. But I can say y'all with the best of them also.
Yes.
So thank you all very much for your presentation today.
Thank you.
And our last group of the day is going to be Harbor House of Louisville. We're going to have them come to the table and briefly introduce themselves. All right, if you could make sure that your microphone's on and introduce yourselves for the record and begin.
Hi, my name is Diane Clark, and I'm happy to be here. It's good to see so many faces that I'm familiar with, so thank you for giving us the opportunity. I'm with Harbor House of Louisville. If you all want to introduce yourselves.
My name is Abby Whalen. I'm the Program Director for Harbor House of Louisville.
And I'm Maria Smith. I'm the CEO of Harbor House. So thank you very much, and thank you, Nima, for inviting us.
And I'll be leading this off. Again, I'm so grateful to be here to talk about opportunity and inclusion. I want to say a shout out to Representative Nima for giving us this opportunity. She recently visited Harbor House and toured our current and future facility. And unbeknownst to her, I have about 2 decades with the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth, so I had long heard of her prior to putting a face to a name. Her family moved here from India to Louisville, Kentucky to attend the DePaul School so that her brother could experience a world-class learning difference program. And so much like DePaul, Harbor House is very much an innovative, cutting-edge program that's taking a look at a population that frequently falls through the cracks. Now, we've heard a lot today about minorities, gender inequity, but what we haven't touched on is what's happening with the state's disabled population and how there is truly a disparity when it comes to job opportunity and development. So let's take a look at our population when it comes to those people that are that have disabilities, or as we like to say, have abilities. We see people, everyone that we serve, as having abilities. So we have about 1,330,951 adults in Kentucky that have a disability. That's equal to about 37% of our population, or 1 in 3 adults. That is a very significant percentage of our population here in Kentucky. And that may be a physical, an intellectual, a hearing or a vision disability, or like my child who has severe dyslexia, it could be a learning difference. But all of those disabilities deserve to have opportunities and fulfillment like each of us do day to day. When it comes to inclusion and opportunity, what we find is that those with a disability are less likely to participate in the labor force. In Kentucky, 15.8% of the population ages 16 to 64 report having a disability that limits their activity, and only 27% are employed. That's a significant difference between our average employment rate of 68% among Kentuckians 25 to 64. In our neighborhood, we're located in southwest Jefferson County. We also take a look at that Dixie Highway corridor. And I think the statistics there are quite shocking. We're looking at the zip code of 40216, and when you look at it, life expectancy in that area is 67 years of age, as opposed to our neighbors that are in eastern Jefferson County, many of whom will live into their 80s. We also see that there's low access to key community resources, and about a third earn 30% or less of area median income. And so those are two of the populations, those that live around Harbor House in southwest Jefferson County, and those that are disabled that we are serving and hoping to further serve. A snapshot at our current building and our current services, we serve over 28 zip codes. We're in a building that's about 20 years old, and it's a little over 8,000 square feet. We are building a brand new intergenerational life center that is going to bring so much more opportunity to not just that area of southwest Jefferson County, but all of Jefferson County and to the state. We are going to be one of the first intergenerational centers in all of Kentucky. And when we open, that facility will be over 35,000 square feet. We're going to be able to serve 400 people daily, and we hope to increase to over 30 zip codes. And really, it's all about inclusion and opportunity. Now, let's also take an even closer look at Jefferson County and who we might be able to serve. We see that 8% of our population between the ages of 18 to 65 have a disability. 20% 26% of the total population is over the age of 65, and 22% is under the age of 18. So as we move into this new building, we could potentially serve over 300,000 people. In our new facility, not only will we continue to serve persons with disabilities, but we will also begin to have before and after school programs for children and so that they can be dropped off before school starts and have a place to come for tutoring after. We're going to add programming for seniors, and we're going to increase our young adult program. And so we're really going to be a one-stop shop for people. I can talk personally. I found myself entering my 30s. I had 2 parents in wheelchairs, a brother with a brain injury, and a young child. I would have given anything to have one place that would accommodate everybody so that they could be their best selves while I at the same time continued to work. Harbor House has had amazing growth in the last 30 years. It is a grassroots organization that was founded by parents that saw a need. It started off with 11 folks, young men and women that had aged out of the school system. And so it was started in 1992. Fairly quickly, while it was in its infancy, they sweet-talked Maria Smith into coming on board. She was finishing her master's at Bellarmine University. She had 15 years in banking, and a chance call to check on a family member who might know a plumber that could work on her drainage issue led to, hey, are you available for this thing I'm thinking about? And so 27 years later, she has led us from 11 people to over 150 people that we currently serve, and is moving us towards being able to serve 400 plus. In 2002, we got our first bricks and mortar building. That is the building that we currently are serving our participants in, and that building we will continue to use once we get into the new building. That will become a child enrichment center. We are very good stewards of our funds. In 2004, we added the Kentucky Derby. We needed a way to create awareness as well as to fundraise for our many programs. And this year we celebrated 20 years, and we dropped over 50,000 ducks into the river. And it is both a fundraising and fundraising event. We then began to add respite care. And what we were seeing was a number of our families that might have an emergency, or they might need to be able to go out of town for business, needed a place that was familiar to their loved ones where they could spend a day or two. It was also equally important to the people that we serve that they had independence. And we tell the story of one of our folks that has been around forever. Her brother, her twin, has been attending Harbor House for over 20 years. Karen likes to say she'll hear Bud in the next room packing his bag when he's done with the family and needs a break. So respite care goes 2 ways. It's independence, and it's also self-care. In 2017, we were able to purchase the land that is adjacent to the current facility in which we operate. In 2020, the demand was so great for our respite services that we added a second home. In 2022, we broke ground on our new intergenerational center. Now, between 2017 and 2022, we had a little thing called the pandemic. And if you can imagine having to raise money and to move construction forward during this period of time, well, we made it happen. And so we are just months away from officially opening our new building. It's a $17 million project. It is all funded by donor funds and foundations, as well as some government funds. We are still $4 billion short, so just so you all know that. So we continue to campaign for funding as we complete this building. And once that is completed, we will be moving into phase 2 of construction, in which we'll add our Child Enrichment Center. And again, it will be a cutting-edge facility in which we'll be teaching the Emilio Reggio method. It is typically a private school method that you find, I would say, mostly in eastern Jefferson County, but we feel like all children, no matter where they live, should have access to the finest foundation. Again, we're all about inclusion and opportunity. And again, we serve over 150 people each day with abilities. And when it comes to the breakdown on race, we have approximately 49% persons of color and 51% are Caucasian. I would say that our staff that work there, and many of whom have been there for a very long time, also mirror those statistics. And now I hand it over to Abby to talk a little more in depth about the programs that we do offer.
Thank you, Diane. Currently, Harbor House provides adult day training to over 155 folks. We serve these adults who are on this Supports for Community Living waiver, the Michelle P. waiver, the Home and Community-Based waiver, and also folks through state general funds, and also some people who private pay who are not on these waivers. We also serve those in the community through CLS supports and personal assistance. So these services really are able to help those folks get out into the community and work on skills such as money management, healthy exercise, just really making good connections with those in their community. We provide respite, like Diane was talking. I always like to say that it gives the caregiver a break, but it also gives our participants a break from their caregivers. That's also very popular for us. During the pandemic, we started our Teen Life Skills program, where we serve teens 13 to 18 years of age. We partner with Metro United Way for the Blocks program to ensure that we are providing good quality out of school time services. We also provide a transportation. We have transportation services. We have a fleet of 10 vehicles, so we are able to pick up our participants from home and bring them directly to us, and then provide them quality service transportation home as well. That way they aren't waiting on their cab, or their cabs cancel on them, such as that. We have our Home Sweet Home personal service agency. So we currently have staff that are going into the homes of seniors to help them with housekeeping. We have a pretty good list of those folks, and we are also expanding to provide more personal service, non-medical services, where we will assist them with more ADLs and life skills in their home so they can age in place. We have our bulk mail and fulfillment services at our day program. So we have a portion of our folks that can come to us during their day and make a living, make a good wage. And we partner with several different companies such as GE and Parent Giving, where they fulfill those orders, and that's a big part of their day. One of our larger services that we enjoy doing is supported employment. So our participants can come to us. We receive referrals through the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, and we assist them with finding good employment in the community, which has been really great. Our transportation services are able to assist them to and from their workplace as well, which is generally a pretty big barrier for employment for our participants. Let's see. We are expanding, as Diane said. We have started our Adult Day Health program, so we are able to assist seniors who will be coming to us who may need a little bit more of medical attention. So we have our Director of Health Services and LPNs on site that are able to assist them throughout the day, and they are able to participate in all of our fun activities that we have. Our before and after school care. There will be medical, dental, and spa services, a fitness center, hot meals prepared on site. So we will have chef services, and we just became certified through the federal food program to provide meals to everyone that attends. We are going to expand our transportation services to bring our seniors and more medical runs, which will be exciting. And then another big thing that we are very excited, we just became independent through the Department of Labor for job apprenticeship programs. So currently we are able to have an apprenticeship program for our direct support professionals that work directly with our participants, but we are looking to expand that. So the surrounding seniors in our area who may not have access to higher education after graduation could become certified in IT or HR or medical records. Really, the sky is the limit for what we would like to do with that. We also will have a music, dance, and art studio, a technology center, and our child enrichment center and extended stay respite, which is coming very soon.
And now Maria Smith will talk a little more about basically a dream she dreamed 27 years ago, and now it's becoming a reality.
And do I need to say more? Have you heard enough? And you're wondering, I'm sure you're looking at all this and listening to this, going, how are they going to do all of this? We do it because we partner. We partner with many people in our community. And yes, what happens at Harbor House is very transformational. People come in and they want to bring their own skills to the table, and we love it. I first dreamed of this intergenerational center when I watched my grandmother with my own 2 children, and she loved nothing better than to hang out with them, and they loved nothing better than to have her around. And now I get to be grandma to 4 other little boys, and I know how she felt. Apple of your eyes, joy exudes in those interactions. And I wanted more people to be able to experience this, because kids are dropped off at a daycare, seniors are dropped off at their senior care center, people with disabilities are dropped off at the disability center. How do we bring these folks together, and how do we make a meaningful life and provide that for them throughout life, from early on to late? So this whole thing of intergenerational is becoming a reality. And not just for me, it's for so many people around our community who need these services. I realized one day that when I met the people at Harbor House, what great opportunities there were for them. And the parents were tired, though. They were the ones that fought to get their children integrated into the school system. And now how do you integrate them into society, and how do you make them part of who we are in the larger picture? So some of our employment opportunities came up early. The bulk mail fulfillment business, I started that in 1996 because I said, well, we need a place that they can make, or a way for them to make money and to be purposeful. We've got some people that get up in the morning and that's what they want to do. They come there to work. But it needed to expand beyond that. It's a stepping stone for many of them. It's an opportunity for them to have training and then to take that out into the larger world and to do other things in the community as supported employment, as Abby said. Home Sweet Home is another one that we adopted several years ago, and that was to give our people competitive wages. They work alongside someone in the community who does house cleaning. They work alongside them. They become that house cleaner too. I mean, it was such a powerful, we had a foundation that said, why don't you project this, just do a project on this and see if it works. So we did. We picked 5 homes. We went in, took our people, and it was overwhelming. The participant that went felt like they were doing a senior a favor. The senior that had our participant came felt like they were doing a favor for the adult that was there to work in their home, and it became a magical relationship. We had one guy that called in sick one day, and he called back and he told the lady that was running Home Sweet Home, he goes, I got to go today. I can't be home. And he goes, well, she said, I thought you were homesick. And he goes, I am, but Miss Betty needs me today. I can't miss Miss Betty. And they got paid, wages like you and I would, and they're with everybody else in the community. So it was a competitive employment situation for Home Sweet Home. So that stepping stone of learning in the bulk mail fulfillment center of how to show up, what to do, how to dress, how to be social, that helped engage them in Home Sweet Home as well as other jobs in our community. Now to expand into other opportunities coming up with this new building are huge. We heard them just talk about from the Career Center with how to look at technology. We have a gentleman that's going to run our beauty salon. He happens to be a graduate from Speed School. He's going to run our technology center. And we're going to do an apprenticeship with that technology center to help those who are just recently graduating to be able to do the apprenticeship and go into, we're going to open up small to medium-sized businesses where they can go in and have these opportunities to engage in the community through higher paying wages and to have access to that. Because right now, some of them don't have access. They don't come from an area of rich colleagues that can help them be employed in this kind of a field and way. So we want to offer those opportunities for them as well there, along with our salon and spa. I asked D. Tran, he's going to run this. I said, we've got people with disabilities. Have you ever thought about having somebody be able to do nails and pay them a higher wage to do nails? They're in a chair. They can't do the pedicures. They could do oh my gosh, he said that would be awesome. So there are opportunities for them to learn in there. The commercial kitchen that we're going to add, opportunities to do apprenticeships with that. Opportunities with solar energy. I've been approached by a couple of gentlemen. They asked me to include that in the apprenticeship. And the apprenticeship is a year-long certification process, and you earn as you learn. And as you learn and as your skills build, then you get a higher wage. But you work with these companies so that these companies, we are actually training these individuals into that company's culture and what they need to know on the job to do that job. So yes, Harbor House indeed embodies everything about inclusion and opportunities for everybody. It bridges the healer in the community to bring together these different segments, to be that barrier. It takes down the barrier. You know, you see somebody with a disability and you don't cringe. You know how to talk to them. You know how to go up and talk to them. They're just like you and me. They want to be, you know, they want to be communicated with. They want to be included. We build bridges. Seniors won't be looking at these children as, oh, look at those kids that don't know anything about life. They may be the ones that come in and teaching them about how to use their computers and how to work on their phones and how to connect with their families. But there are, you know, some of the faces of Harbor House here are just, I could tell you a story about each one of these people in this, but you'd have to come and see it for yourself. I invite you to come take a tour. Nima came out last week, and thank you for extending the invitation for us to come here and say a few things. We could talk all day long, but really the essence of feeling what's there and the love that Harbor House shares with everybody is what's so enriching and humbling to be there and to do this. So we have a ribbon cutting on September 22nd for the new building. Love for you to be there. Also on August 17th, I'm going to go back. We're going to celebrate at Olmsted. We're doing a fundraising breakfast. So come and have your checkbooks ready. And then in November, we're going to do an appreciation and open house for the community. So,
well, this was an awesome presentation. Thank you. I do have one question. Ms. Clark, did Representative Kulkarni put you up to all those really nice things you said about her at the beginning of your presentation?
She's pretty amazing. That's
when it continues.
Yeah. But it's how I mean, who would have ever thought, right, that your family would move from India because of this one woman, Sister Ann Rita Mock, who was a force to be reckoned with. And she, much like Harbor House, saw a need. And now you're leading others here in Frankfort. So I just think possibilities are limitless, and you never know. And to tie further into the internationality, how really the world is flat, is when we open our cafe, we're going to be training a number of our folks in the cafe. Well, the beans that we use come from South Africa, and that money will be filtered back to South Africa, to the poor villages where they're growing the bean, and it will be used for education there. So we're all interconnected.
Senator Neal.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not surprised by Representative Kulkarni. This is pretty common behavior on her part, always creative and always positive. I don't have a question to ask. I just want to make an observation. It looks like we've had 3 home runs today. This is a great presentation. In fact, I'd like to take that tour. And I'm going to have my office reach out for that purpose. But I think this is a fantastic concept. And, wow, there's nothing I can add to what you've said. Thank you so much for bringing it.
Thank you, Senator.
Representative Kulkarni.
If nobody else has any questions. No, I want to thank you very much for allowing Harbor House to be a late addition to our committee meeting today. It's Disability Pride Month, and I wanted to make sure that you all were able to present the great work that you are doing and have been doing, and really maybe be a model for this committee, for the disability community, right? Well, how can we serve individuals that in terms of demographics may intersect along lines of gender, race, socioeconomic status? The need is there. And so the work that you're doing is transformational because it connects the needs with the resources, of course, the glue being people that care. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you, Chair, for allowing them to testify. I think it was, in my opinion, the best presentation of the day. No offense to anybody here. But I just wanted to mention that. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and I'm sure we would all be very happy to help you expand that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with there being no remaining questions, I'd like to remind the members the next meeting of the Commission on Race and Access to Opportunity will take place on Tuesday, August 22nd at 1 p.m. The topic of discussion will be diversity, equity, and inclusion. And with that, move to adjourn.